Hey there, this is Tim of Paragon Partners, and in this video I'm going to go over my 10 eBay product acquisition mistakes or my biggest bonehead moves. Now, I'm not going over my mistakes of selling on eBay, and believe me, I made plenty of those. Rather, I'm just talking about the mistakes I've made in acquiring the goods that I put up on eBay for sale. Now, if you're probably like me, you've watched a lot of videos of how to sell on eBay, and of course they've all provided very helpful. But I wanted to go over not just selling on eBay, but acquiring the goods to sell on eBay. So the first mistake I've made is dropping an item, and this is a 101 dumbass move. One time I bought a bunch of goods on an auction and I shoved them all in my passenger seat. Then when I came home, I opened up the passenger door, and one of the items, it had rolled out from the seat along the ledge. And of course, when I opened up the door, it fell to the ground and busted. It was like a $10 vase. So of course, it wasn't the end of the world, but you know, 10 bucks is 10 bucks. And I thought it was a stupid mistake. I wish I would have better packed it so I didn't end up dropping it. Other times, one time when I was packing an item, of course I was butterfingers and I fumbled it, and I went ahead and I broke it, and I had to cancel the sale. So just I've committed that stupid mistake a couple of times. Second is buying open toys. Now I mean that toys that do not have the saran wrap intact on them. So for instance, I come across a lot of model kits. And these model kits, they look complete, but I bought one where it certainly looked all there, but when the seller went ahead and put it together, he found one of the panes was missing. Same thing with board games. Board games, they can look complete, but if you're missing one item, man, it shoots the whole value. And I see this a lot on Legos, especially those Technic kits, where they can have close to 1,000 parts and they can be worth $400 to $500. And if you're missing even just one little piece, that can shoot the value in half. So buying kits that are open, and if they look complete, I don't go for it anymore. Third mistake is assuming the box contents match the box. So this happens a lot, like in motherboards. Someone will go ahead and they'll buy a new motherboard. They'll take the old motherboard out, put it back in the box in their do shed, and they'll go ahead and return it. And then I go ahead and end up getting that return, and I think the motherboard inside the box matches what's outside the box. Or I've also had this happen on brake pads as well. Someone, they'll buy a set of brake pads, they'll put the old brake pads back into the box and return it. And of course you think you're getting the brand new good brake pads. So I never assume what's outside the box is what's inside the box anymore. Not tested enough. This one's a tough one because you can never test enough. And of course you get a lot of different equipment in, so it can be hard to know how to test it. But I've had this, for instance, with VCRs and stereos, where I would just go ahead and power it on to make sure that it worked. And I found that, that's not enough. So for instance, you know, I've had VCRs which are tape eaters, and you actually had to put in a tape and play it to make sure it worked. And of course, on stereos, I've had to make sure that the cassette fully works, as well as both the AM and FM band. And you can never do too much testing, but at some point you have to call it quits. So I say making a reasonable testing effort, that's where I had difficulty with. Next, no power adapter. So sometimes I'll buy something that's really, really cool, really exciting. It doesn't have the power adapter. I think, I'll go ahead and I'll get it anyway, and I'll find the power adapter. And I didn't realize how specific these power adapters could be. And I've had this happen a lot, say on telephones and stereos, where of course sometimes you have to get the right voltage and amperage, but you also have to get the right size jack as well. And you know, when I go down to my thrift store, I see power adapters for $1 each. I think, no problem. But I didn't realize how specific they were. And sometimes when I buy these power adapters on eBay, they can be anywhere from 10 bucks to 35 bucks. So they can be worth more than the part itself. And so underestimating how difficult it is to get the power adapter for something I buy where it's missing the power adapter, or how much it costs, that's been another silly mistake I've made. And then buying parts without identifiers. So I've done this a lot, say with printer trays. These printer trays, they can be worth sometimes up to 30 bucks alone. What happens is people, they go ahead and they break them, and then they want to buy just the printer tray itself. And if they're the product identifiers on the printer tray, you can go ahead and Google up and find out the printer that matches too. But if it doesn't have a product identifying number on it, then it's near impossible to align to whichever printer it goes with. I've also had the same thing on automotive replacement panels. So for instance, like glove box covers, those can be very specific, or sometimes the rear deflectors, same thing. They can be worth a lot, but only if you can identify it and know what it goes to. And sometimes when I buy that, I think, I'll figure it out, but I don't. And suddenly through tech support, so sometimes I have people that buy my item and then they ask me questions afterwards. So they'll get a VCR camera, or sometimes I sold some items in the medical space, and then they expect me to know how it works, or they answer questions on its operations, which of course I'm a generalist. I sell a lot of different goods. And so being able to respond articulately to those requests for help and be able to point them to the correct resource took me a while to do. Finally, mixing up the asking price versus the sold price. So in the beginning, when I was researching goods, I look up, and of course I see all the eBay listings, think, wow, man, look how much this goes for. Well, what I wasn't actually looking up was how much the items sold for. So I've done this with vintage cameras, for instance, some Polaroids, where I see people, the asking price was like $40. I thought, well, hoo-hoo, I can make money on this. But no, what they were really going for was from anywhere from $10 to $15. I've made the same mistake on vintage Tonka items. So I came across a Tonka item, which I was thinking of buying, and of course people were asking $80 on it, but what they were really going for was more like $20. So that was a biggie mistake for me. Then overpaying. Of course, this is a classic, and you can't help but do this when you buy so many items. Of course, some you're really going to make on, some you're really not going to make on. But still, I have opportunity to be more astute here. So for instance, one time I bought some Morgan dollars, and I bought them in the range of $30 to $32. And the market was pretty clear. They were worth $20 to $22. So I was paying 50% too much on those dollars. And I was just getting caught up in the excitement of them instead of looking at their monetary value. Lastly, thinking I understood a niche. This is a problem of the ego. And I've certainly made this mistake. So there are some niches, comic books as an example, where 99% of the items have no value and they're worthless. And it's that 1% that has value, but of course it's that 1% that drives the whole niche and everyone dreams about. So I bought in a stack of comic books thinking, woohoo, there's money in here. And then other people look at it and they go, man, it's worth more recycled than what you have in the comic book value here. So I've definitely made this mistake. And this is classically with other niches. So I'll never buy stamps, for instance, because stamps is its own specialty. Same thing, I'm staying away from paper money because that's its own specialty. And so overestimating how much I knew about this particular niche, and I spent too much, I've made that mistake as well. So I hope these 10 items, I made each and every one of these. I hope this is helpful to you so you can stay away from these 10 as well. Cheers.